Yeah, so right here, when they do this line here, you can hear her from. Right there. It was not Brian's falsetto part, but it was that part right underneath it. And when they come in on the backgrounds on the second verse, 3 dominant, great change.
All right, welcome back to In My Beach Boys Room podcast. I am Adam Schreiner. I'm sitting here with Matthew Hartz, and I have John Hartz here today. Or we have John Hartz. He has been mentioned more than anybody else, I think, on this podcast. He's
except for but he hasn't been on the. But podcast. He hasn't
been on the podcast. Yeah. So Matthew said this is probably a good episode to bring him in. This is one of the first albums that you guys.
Well, this is one of Mom's 3 albums that the first 3 albums that we digested when we were infants.
So we're gonna get into all that. They had it was a tribute band, cover band.
John and I performed Beach Boy tunes all our lives. My earliest gigs as a professional musician or as a performing musician, we're doing Beach Boy songs with John at Perfect. School assemblies and stuff like that. But then in the early 2000s, John and I and Bud Goodmanson, Lewis McFarland, and a guy named Seth Carlson, we basically formed a Beach Boys tribute band that was basically kind of like a Beatlemania version of the Beach Boys. It was all this is one of the shirts, as a matter of fact, from it. We all had the striped shirts, and then we all had the exact Olympic white instruments like are on the wall over there and on the front of the concert album.
And we're talking full on paid gigs, like not just like playing in the basement.
No. As a matter of fact, that's the reason we did it, is because we had some demand for it, and we did the Northwest Motor Fest. We did several big shows, and then we were featured on Cool 104 for a while because when we took our recording of Surfer Girl in, that was a live recording. They used it for a while, for at least 6 months or so. They'd have a contest and they'd play our version of Surfer Girl back to back with the Beach Boys and have listeners call in and guess,
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and we had about 50% people that would, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
We'll have to get that deal going where we get the listeners some Wilson Project music.
Yeah, maybe we'll throw Surfer Girl on the end of this thing, or I know it's not part of this album, but but he's here, so we'll get that out one way or another. So, John, were you just vocals? Were you playing any instruments? What were you?
Just vocals, just the part of Mike Love. So the stuff where, which a lot of the stuff we did involved Mike Love. So there wasn't too much where I was just standing up there on stage.
Yeah.
Well, no, Mike was involved on everything, but and people. When we were young, John often sang Mike's parts from the records too. So it was, and I do some sort of backing vocal or something.
And so how many?
We did pretty well in the band of, like if it were a Dennis song singing, our drummer would sing it. Like Lewis would sing, Do You Want to Dance? Like Dennis sang. And like if it were a Mike Love part, I would sing it. If it were a Brian part, Bud would sing it. And, like
amazing.
Matt would sing a Carl song. So like it was very well.
We tried to do it as legit as possible.
Totally.
And like even Olive, and tried to learn all of Carl's guitar solos, and Bud played the bass with his thumb like Brian did, and Lewis played the drums backward, played the snare with his right hand.
Authentic.
That's
the
awesome. Idea was for it to be authentic.
That's awesome. And so then, like, how many songs do you guys think you guys had in your repertoire?
We had about a 50-song repertoire. Yeah, I had to learn the harmonies for...
That's a lot.
All of that, and then I made them all practice CDs with their part on it, and then with all the parts on it. So.
Some of the stuff ended up. We by the end we figured out our best. I would say like these 30 of the 50 are the better. You know what I mean? But I'd say through it all there were about 50 songs, and it was. And especially because we rolled through a couple musicians, there's not that much change, but there was a little bit of change in a few.
The core
musicians.
4.
Yeah. So, but there were...
the Al Jardine guy, who is the only not family member, that's the one that we ran 2 or 3 different guys through.
Yeah. And I mean, like, but it was cool. We like several downtown gigs that
Yeah, we played
really,
the Reef a few times.
and businesses would hire us to come out and
do
their
corporate events.
Totally.
Yeah, like it was. We did quite a few things, but yeah, it was just fun.
Just fun. And how long? I don't know if you said this. How long did you guys do this for?
We did it for 4 or 5 years pretty seriously. And I would say more than anything, John and I's little sister, when she passed away, that kind of, it was a point where I just kind of quit doing a lot of things, you know, I'm trying to think of what year. Oh yeah. Sammy passed away in 2006,
and Molly was 07, right at the start of 07.
And then, so it was really around the time of Sammy's passing, because we had just played Sammy's 40th birthday party a couple years before that. That's one of my favorite shows we did.
Yeah, it was just fun. It was like, you know, like with anything, there were better shows and worse shows.
Sure,
and like, there were some days when we played the Reef where the whole place was just jam packed, and you had Beach Boy, like just people like just loving it. You know, so. But I just remember like a lot of the stuff was super cool.
Yeah. Cool.
It's a fun thing to do.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And so, yeah, we'll get some Wilson Project stuff out so they can, you know, our listeners can check that out. But we probably should get into the Little Deuce Coupe album analysis. So, but you said you want to
do some history stuff before
first.
we do that.
Okay.
So let's go back to Surfer Girl. The Surfer Girl album was recorded from May to early July in '63. Okay. On that record were two new cartoons. We had Little Deuce Coupe and Our Car Club. Okay, now before that, we had 409 on Surfin' Safari and Shutdown on Surfin' USA. So we had 4 cartoons. In June of 1963, Capitol Records drafts Nick Venet and Gary Usher. Gary Usher, who wrote 409 and In My Room. Nick Venet, who's the guy who signed the Beach Boys and is the producer, listed as the producer on the first 2 records. So Capitol says, hey, you guys, these cartoons were did pretty well. Let's put together a record, and you guys will assemble a whole another car album. As a matter of fact, where is that thing? Here it is. This is the original Shutdown. It has 2 songs by the Beach Boys on it, and the rest of them are groups called like the Piltdown Men and the Eligibles, and some of them are legitimate and some of them are just studio musicians that they made up the names of these people to put out a car song album. Okay. Well, anyway, it was pretty successful. It went to number 8. And the Beach Boys, I don't think necessarily knew it was going to happen. And so this probably kind of pissed some people off, including maybe Brian and Murray and some others, and say, hey, man, we want to capitalize on our deal too. And just as an aside, before I go any further, if you think, wow, the Beach Boys, the guy that wrote 409 and their producer were involved with something else, kind of making Beach Boys like music, the Hondells, this is from the next year, but they basically got their name, I think, because of the Hondas and maybe Little Honda. But this record is produced by Nick Venet and Gary Usher. And the guy that wrote the liner notes is Roger Christian, who wrote we're going to talk about him a lot today in today's episode, because he wrote most of the lyrics on the Little Deuce Coupe album, including Little Deuce Coupe. Uh-huh. And so I'm basically showing that to the Beach Boys' success spurred a lot of sound-alike bands and people that jumped on the bandwagon. And then they even used the same people that were in the Beach Boys world were producing these albums. And Bruce Johnston, as we've already talked, was in early surf groups at this time. They were doing Beach Boy knockoffs, him with Terry Melcher as the ripcords, like Hey Little Cobra and Little GTO. But I just wanted to say, okay, the Beach Boys started something that just kind of went crazy within the industry. And so I think Little Deuce Coupe it's an attempt for the Beach Boys, the first attempt for them to capitalize on the success of the cartoons. So Little Deuce Coupe was the first It was the Beach Boys trying to capitalize on their car songs. Now let's jump ahead to the first album of 1964, which is actually called Shutdown Volume 2, which is after all this crap had gone on. It's hypothesized that even though there's hardly, there's a song called Shutdown Volume 2 that's an instrumental on there, but it was more a dig at Capitol for, thanks for putting out the record Shutdown and everybody thought it was a Beach Boys record. Now we'll just put out one that's Shutdown Volume 2 and it is all the Beach Boys. And that was, so it's kind of, it's a weird little history in there, if that makes any sense. So the Little Deuce Coupe album was supposedly recorded in just a couple of days in early September, just a couple of days, at the same time that the Surfer Girl album was released in early September. It had been recorded in the summer, right? Okay, and all this time, John, check this out, and I know this might be a bit of a revelation to you, but even before the famous time when Brian quit the road at the end of 64, in 63 sometimes, the Beach Boys on the road, a lot of the time, as a matter of fact, were Carl and Dennis, David, Mike, and Al. Al had come back and he was playing the bass and singing Brian's high parts on the road. So the Beach Boys, the other thing that makes this amazing, all through that summer, they were playing almost every day. And everybody's wondered, how did they get this album recorded? Well, first of all, they don't really think it was recorded in just 2 days. But there's only 8 new tracks on the record because why? We've got the 4 car songs from the first 4, so we don't have as many to record. And then of those 8 tracks, only 5 of them are really new songs. They're actually songs that have been recycled from other tunes. And so there wasn't that much work to do. But that being said, we'll talk about the lineup on the record. On the back of Little Deuce Coupe, it's a picture of David, not Al. So they're still using the pictures from that period before Al was with the band. But Al is playing bass and some guitar and singing on the whole record. Okay. So we've got 6 Beach Boys on this.
Was this the first time we saw Be True to Your School?
Yes. Yeah. But that's the single version didn't come out until after Be True to You, after the album.
Right.
So anyway, so we've got 6 Beach Boys, plus we've got Hal Blaine from the Wrecking Crew, Steve Douglas from, the group they called the Wrecking Crew, and some other session musicians, possibly Glenn Campbell, some other people on this record, but it's the Beach Boys themselves as the main band. They did most of the tracking, augmented by the other musicians. However, it's been hypothesized that Brian's friends, he was producing another group called the Survivors at this point, one of the many things besides Jan and Dean, besides the Honeys. And this was a group of his friends, and they had recorded a song called Pamela Jean, which actually turns into Car Crazy Cutie on this album. But it's hypothesized that because the Beach Boys were on the road so much, the other Beach Boys, that Brian actually brought in some of those guys. And there are some strange voices in the backgrounds on here. And Bob Norberg is hypothesized to be one, and maybe Rich Ilarion. I'll get into that, but that's going to set the table for the album, if that makes any sense. It was released in October 7th, so just 3 weeks after Surfer Girl, and it did go to number 4.
Oh, wow.
So it was a really successful album. So there's the little brief history of Little Deuce Coupe, which was the Beach Boys' first total car album.
And like you said, because that was actually one thing I looked at as well when I was going through these songs and you mentioned it just now, is the amount of new songs compared to reused songs. Mm-hmm. And so it was the number you said was 8?
Well, there's 8 new tracks.
8 new tracks.
But only 5 of those are bona fide new songs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if they did have a short amount of time to work on it, and they did only do a few days in the studios, that's making more sense that, Brian kind of cut down on the amount of work he had to do. It wasn't an album of all new material, right?
Okay. And so then, and you wanted to bring John in on this one for a specific, because this was an album that.
Well, this is one of the 3 that Mom had when we were little. And it's just, these 3 albums are forever, like they're the most deep-seated albums because they're like primitive memories, you know.
So then, it was your parents' album? It wasn't neither one of you?
No, it was mom's. They were mom's records.
Okay, so
Yeah, they were around since we were like born because mom probably bought them. Like I was born in 71, he was born in 69.
She bought them when she was in college and high school, so she bought them when they came out.
Got it.
So they were just always in the house.
Always in the house. Nice. Okay, so then, do we want to start talking about each track, or how do you want?
That was. I just needed to. It is really kind of a convoluted history that I didn't even know a lot of until a few years ago. And then the more I got that, oh man, that's pretty interesting. You know, especially when you figure Surfer Girl was released in September and then Little Deuce Coupe was that's a month. You know, when what do we talk about with artists? You get a new album every couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, they're even extending it out. Some artists are like making it more of a big deal. Like they only release one every 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, very different. But you'd kind of mentioned that at this time, there was really no precedent that had been set for how to do this.
No, rock and roll was brand new. So Brian didn't even know what should be expected of him. He was just excited to work and make all this music.
Right.
You know, and didn't know he was really burning himself out as much as he was.
Sure. Okay, so then let's get into the first. Let's just start working through the tracks, which obviously we already talked about Little Deuce Coupe in the last episode.
Mm-hmm. Because it was on the Surfer
Girl album. Do we want to revisit that at all?
Well, I want, it's reportedly it's Brian's favorite of his cartoons that he wrote, and it's one of the first times we see a shuffle beat.
Yeah,
and I think we talked about.
I think you said that in the last episode.
But there's also a cool. It's a shuffle, but there's a cool blues element to it. The vocal line is bluesy, and so it's a blues shuffle. And then one thing I was reminded of when I was doing the research is Frank Zappa, believe it or not, says that this tune was pivotal for him musically because of Brian's moving back and forth from the 2 minor to the 5 on the hook. Babe, so don't put me down. I've got the fastest set of wheels in town. Sun comes up to me, don't have a set of wings, man, in motion goodbye. So right here in the chorus in the hook where it goes, just that 5, Little Deuce Coupe, you don't know what I got. Brian goes, Little Deuce Coupe, you don't know what I got. Substituting the 2 minor for a 5, which is very common in theory, but it was the first time somebody did something jazz substitution wise that bent Frank Zappa's ear on a record, and he cites that, and that's even on Wikipedia.
Okay, so in this, good old Wikipedia. So then something like that is something that is one of those examples.
It's a jazz chord substitution. But that, like,
you wouldn't really, I guess, a non-musician ear like myself wouldn't even catch something like that.
But it definitely
feels simple, but it's actually, it's one of those examples of it, like the Beach Boys music being more technical than it might seem.
Yeah, especially to a casual listener.
Exactly.
That still sounds like bubblegum, but that's advanced chord ideas even in a simpler tune like Little Deuce Coupe.
Right.
You got anything to say about Little Deuce Coupe? We played that a lot growing up.
Yeah, I would say the shuffle beat. I just think that the tune as a whole is very catchy. I think that it's a great song to start an album with, and even name an album because of the actual just how much it catches the listener's ear. That's the best way I'd say.
I like to also how supposedly it's got 2 drummers on it. Dennis is playing drums on the basic track, but Hal Blaine is playing on here too. And that little snare drum hit that starts the thing is kind of, sets the table and it really catches the ear too. And that hook to begin the song. So that's cool.
Goddamn. Okay. Okay. So then, Little Deuce Coupe, I think just a popular song, like you said. It's got that catchy. It just has that good feeling, catchy thing that's good for
And I think Al also said on this one, he said that this one he didn't play bass on because it was a little bit hard for him. So Carl took over the bass, and Brian's playing piano on it, and so that's kind of fun.
Like maybe for me, someone that's more like listening to vocals than than anything else, especially at a really young age, right? Like you hear that how it comes in, like, well, I'm not bragging, babe, so don't put me down. Like that type of like lead in, like you just kind of catches
you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think, and Matthew and I have talked about this before as well. There are a lot of people. That's what the vocals is what catches them first. So
well, this is a signature Mike Love tune too. I mean, I think it's one of his hardest. And then Mike also used this tune to introduce the Beach Boys for years. For a couple years after this.
Yeah. So then we we move into Ballad of Ole Betsy.
Yeah. Boy, I remember I even loved this when I was a little kid. I remember sitting and listening to it. This one's written with Roger Christian, also the DJ that helped write Little Deuce Coupe, and he writes a lot of this album with Brian. It's a beautiful intro, but the chord progression is really jazzy. There's a lot of jazz chord progressions that are showing up in this record that were kind of foreshadowed by a couple tunes on Surfer Girl, but it's really, it really was hitting me when I was listening to the album. Some tunes, just familiar chord progressions in some of the tunes with Ballad of Ole Betsy. A flat, then 3 minor, 4, 5, dun, 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 dun. And back to 3 dominant. Just really, really, really pretty stuff. And also, there's the Surfer Girl bass line in there. I was noticing right here. That's it's the same line that's used in Surfer Girl. So I was listening to that. It's another 6/8 ballad from Brian. I hear shadows of a song that people think, why wasn't it ever released? There's a song, if you look on the internet, called Thank Him by Brian as an outside kind of production, maybe the Beach Boys. But I think part of this was part of Thank Him is recycled into Ballad of Ole Betsy. And then the last thing I'll say about this is you can really hear the Beach Boys' mom is on this track, and she's a high voice, and it's a timbre that's the highest voice. As a matter of fact, we want to play a little bit of Ballad of Ole Betsy, and let's see if we can... So we can hear Audrey's voice in there. And this is the tune where it's way prominent. Yeah, so right here, when they do this line here, you can hear her from. Right there. It was not Brian's falsetto part, but it was that part right underneath it. And when they come in on the backgrounds on the second verse, 3 dominant, great change. A flat 7, D minor, or D flat minor. Okay, now you can really hear her voice here.
Why didn't Brian just record it on a different track instead of having
they didn't have that technology back then. It was 3 track. They had to do most of the singing live, and so that's why they brought in other,
That's crazy. So she was singing while Brian was singing the falsetto.
She was singing with, sometimes they'd part out sometimes they'd record the lead separately at this time, and sometimes Brian would be heard with all the harmony singers, but he just needed more people in that high range. But
with only 3 tracks too, you got to have singers at the same time.
And he had they're wondering too, because the Beach Boys were out on the road so much, how much of this could have been, Mom, everybody's gone, can you come in and sing on this? Bob, can you come in and sing on? He was. A lot of those reasons might have been that the Beach Boys were on the road, but Audrey sang with them at other times too, and it's just Brian used more singers a lot of the time.
What I think is really cool about this particular song, and then we'll get to it later, but Spirit of America is like his falsetto in those first 3 albums, you could hear it. It was great. And a lot of times though, it was secondary to, and I'm probably missing a few songs somewhere, but all of a sudden, like Spirit of America and Ballad of Ole Betsy, like the falsetto is so, like, this is the song. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like awesome to get to hear his voice, especially while he was still as young as what he was. You know what I mean? And it was the best you ever heard his falsetto, like right in about that time.
I'd say that, 64 and when you're talking about like, please let me, don't worry, baby, and please, that's the sweet spot of it, really, when it was its healthiest.
Yeah, no question. But I think
66 and 67.
When I sit and listen to Betsy and, you bring up those 2 songs, like Ballad of Ole Betsy and Spirit of America, most people are like, well, like those are Beach Boy songs or whatnot, but the great Beach Boy fans that go like, oh, like that is like where you get to hear Brian's vocals at like about the highest level you can get.
What do you think of Ballad of Ole Betsy?
Well, me and my slow song. Yeah, it was good. It wasn't, but it wasn't. What's funny about the slower songs in these early albums, I actually do like more than when we did the, kind of talking about the slower songs, doing the 70s and on.
Yeah.
Those ones I like these ones better than I like those ones I don't know for whatever reason that is. I don't know, maybe it's because it's kind of has that like, I don't know. I'd rather know how
it's a jazz ballad, really. I'm listening to it from a musician's perspective. I'm really, and that's what resonated with me as a child, right? Is these chords. Wow, I can't even play these things on the guitar because they're so difficult.
The only thing I can my brain can kind of like associate it with is like the Earth Angel type of.
That's because same beat. Earth angel, earth angel, earth angel, will you be mine? It's the same. It's a 6/8 ballad. Doo-wop ballads were really popular at the time, and Spirit of America that we get to later is the same thing. It is a variant on a doo-wop ballad.
Okay, so then apparently I'm a fan of doo-wop ballads because that is what is like
Your Summer Dream from the Surfer Girl album.
So then let's Be True to Your School is next.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I got excited because you asked if this was the first time Be True to Your School had showed up, and the only reason, I was so excited to be like, yes, because I actually know that. I actually know that one. I can answer that.
I heard you answer that.
Yeah. I was excited. I was very excited to be able to answer. Retain that Beach Boys knowledge. But go ahead, Matt.
Well, but this is not the hit version, but. This is the first version that John and I heard for sure. And when we've talked about Endless Summer, the massive compilation that came out in 74, they put it together so quickly that they put the original versions of both this and Help Me Rhonda on there instead of the hit single versions. And so even when John and I got Endless Summer in the mid-70s, we were still hearing the album cut Be True to Your School. And when I finally heard the one with the honeys on and as the cheerleaders and the marching band and everything, I go, wow, what the heck is this?
Wasn't until, for me, the 90s.
Yeah, because when the 90s. CDs got released, when it came on as a bonus track.
Yeah, that's the first time I'd heard that, and I was like, where'd these come from? And I was like, oh, no, these were the singles, right? You told me they were the singles. This
actually, I think Brian recorded. So the album was released October 7th, and either I think the new "Be True to Your School" single came out on October 28th. So somewhere in between that, he went in and recorded a whole new version of "Be True to Your School." That was the hit that was in 1963. So that's kind of a cool thing on that one.
I think listening to the whole, for years listening to this album, it's like weird to hear a song that isn't as car related as the rest of the songs.
And we didn't think about that at the time, though, because we kind of resonate with the school thing. I did find a episode, or as Brian was doing a radio interview in the 70s, and they were asking about some of the early tunes, and they asked him about Be True to Your School, and he goes, that's the one I don't know about the lyric on that one or something, or he said in retrospect, he didn't know whether, I think it was cool and it was something else that resonated with kids, school spirit.
I gotta think Capitol Records loved the thought of it. I mean, you sit there and I just sit and look at the Beach Boy trajectory, and this is going beyond this album, I know, but like you talking about for a California teenager, you're talking about Surf, and then you move on to Cars. And then you go on to Love after that. Yeah. And what do teenagers like more than those three things?
Yeah,
right? It's like the Beach Boys, and I think it's awesome they were putting out albums as quick as they were because the public was craving it.
Mm-hmm.
They are going, as fast as you guys will put stuff out, we'll buy it at the time. What'd you say? It went to number 4?
Yeah.
Deuce Coupe right after Surfer Girl. What'd Surfer Girl go
Surfer
to?
Girl did not do that well.
Oh, wow.
Surfing USA, the second, it went number 2. It was their second album. But don't get me to lying. Some of our fans will say, you guys need to do more hard research on this. Well, I don't know everything about the Beach Boys, folks. I'm sorry. Or I can't remember as old as I am these days. I'll tell you what, Be True to Your School is another one of those songs, though, that seems like a pretty banal pop tune. It's got a scary chord progression that echoes those 6/8 ballads in it, just kind of in a punkier way. But it would do the same thing that I Get Around does the next year, just it's crazy chords. It's a hard song. When we had the Wilson Project, John and I had a Beach Boy tribute band. I remember trying to teach the musicians like Be True to Your School, and that was a hard, because it's a sneaky chord progression, just all over the place.
I know it's not in the Little Deuce Coupe album, but when I did get to hear the original, the one you're talking about where the cheerleaders are in the background doing the cheering, I was like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Especially how they worked it into the song just perfectly. Like it was well integrated. So.
Well, and there's a tune when Brian and Al were on the football team in Hawthorne, Al would always, that song that's in the middle of that version of Be True to Your School, there's da 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 da. That was Onward Cougars from their high school. So they were at, it is how he meshed all that stuff in there and just made it work seamlessly. With a marching band.
And it's like exactly with the other, like it's just really cool. Like I'm not a change guy. Like if I hear something, like I'll hear remix of certain songs and usually I'm like, I'll just stick with the original. That's one where after I heard in the 90s, got to hear that one because it took for the new releases to come out for me to hear it. I was like, I think I might like that better.
Well, don't you like the single version of Help Me Rhonda better than the today version of? Yeah, same.
There's a little bit of I know we're getting away from this album again, but like there's certain parts of it. It's like, it's the single version I just like a little better. So.
No, that's good. Good stuff. So we move on to Car Crazy Cutie.
Yeah, Car Crazy Cutie, which you did in the...
Me and Bud did a version of it with violin and guitar on that. Yep.
Yep, which for me, because I had never heard that song before you did the cover. And so then obviously when I actually heard the original, I've really enjoyed it, obviously. But
it's a doo-wop tune. It's done in the spirit of like Dion is what they said at the time. But it was originally a tune that Brian was producing for other people called Pamela Jean. Have you heard that?
I've heard it. You played it for me once. Like every once in a while, there's more than just this, but you'll play a song for me and go, hey, listen, this is matched up exactly to, and sometimes it'll be the Beach Boys doing with the same melody, 2 completely different sets of lyrics, not a different group,
No. Yeah. So this is one of the tunes that he didn't have to rewrite other than Roger Christian wrote new lyrics to it to be about a somewhat related to cars.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about how in the shower today, I was actually thinking about how cool of an idea that is, the chick working in the garage and getting axle grease under her fingernails and it's pretty cool story. But I also love how you can hear Dennis real prominently in the vocal stack on this. And he's even just slightly out of tune. We always love that though.
There's one on it. He comes in, I believe, second on the, Run, and there is one where he comes in.
I think it's the last one that they do with that. Yeah, and
dude,
he's about a quarter tone off.
But it's almost like it makes you understand it doesn't have to be completely perfect. You know what I mean?
These are young kids.
Yeah.
These are it shows that hadn't been playing their instruments for even very long. I mean, it's pretty crazy stuff. But so anyway,
for this is something that I feel like strongly about, but when I listen to something like Little Deuce Coupe, and to the casual fan, that 409 and Little Deuce Coupe are, that's what I like about the Beach Boys from this album. I would strongly suggest Ballad of Ole Betsy, Spirit of America, Car Crazy Cutie, Cherry Coupe, Custom Machine. There are tracks on this one.
No Go Showboat is one of my favorites.
There are so many great songs here where, and I love all the tracks on all of them just because I'm a fan. But for Surf and Safari, which you guys have, I'm sure already covered, but it felt like there were more filler tunes, whereas this one has just great tunes throughout.
Well, and as we've gone through, if you listen to, obviously, the first few albums, it just gets progressively better and better and less filler. Surfer Girl has very little.
Agreed. I was actually looking at the different stuff the last few days, going it just kept then all of a sudden, to me, I'd strongly suggest to the casual fan, especially, to go listen to this whole entire album because it's just song after song. Somebody who doesn't like Car Crazy Cutie, it's you might not like music a whole bunch because there is a this better than me, but the four freshmen harmony thought to going into the start of it, wherever that it's just tremendous harmonies leading into it, and then the lyrics, the music, every part of that song is very good.
Check this out. You got two tunes, one right after the other are CCC.
Yeah.
Car Crazy Cutie and Cherry Coupe.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
So let's move on to Cherry Coupe, which was been a favorite of me and John's, and always makes me think of Sammy, our cousin, for some reason.
Yeah, it's my favorite on the
Okay,
album.
so it's not
this
is not
the number one for you.
This
on
is
the
number one for me.
Huh.
Okay.
Cool.
And I love the song too, but it's not new. It's the tune was actually attempted as a song called Land Ahoy during the Surf and Safari sessions. And so Brian had the music, but just wasn't satisfied with it. They put it out. And so he knew he had that in the can. Again, here comes the surfer and say, "Hey, Roger, come on, we got to write a bunch of tunes quick." And I've got these other songs, these songs that I was. So it started out as Land Ahoy on Surf and Safari and is now Cherry Coupe on the Little Deuce Coupe album. And it's just I don't know. I love all of Roger Christian's lyrics. And this was a case where actually Brian fit Roger's lyrics to music he had already written. Most of the time he was taking Roger just wrote him poems and then he'd write music around it. But this is a case where he obviously already had it made. But I like this song too. There's something in the rhythm track, and I think it's probably the piano buried in there, played with the guitars. That ding ding ding. There's a sound to that really grabs me.
Well, there was actually one thing that I had noticed, and maybe I'll play it here, but it's it almost sounds like there's a part of the guitar that's going in and out almost. It's like this certain strum here. I'm gonna play it and then see if we can because it was noticeable to me. And I don't know if that's intentional, if that's I don't know, maybe the mix or whatever, but that was just one thing I wanted to bring up. And
Go, cherry,
I think it's in the verse.
While the short around sharpest in the town, and the ending of my groove is one of its kind, and it really looks good. Chop nose neck with glitter lures on the hood. Go cherry, cherry good now. Go cherry,
So weird. It's like
now, cherry go.
you hear the guitar. How the guitars. What's been going on with the guitar in this?
They're just very bright. Yeah, it's just a little. That's Carl. It sounds like too.
So it's just like an emphasis on that. Yeah. So that's intentional on that. That's not like
Yeah. And I hear Hal on this track, so this must be another one where I bet you Dennis is on here and Hal is on here. Anyway,
it just amazes me. I love the lyrics to it. Like you said, you talked about Roger Christian. I think you said but there's so many lyrics in this album where I don't know. Because I'm not a car guy, right?
we made up our own words.
To this day, sometimes I'll actually I'll see the lyrics on the internet and I'll go, I was way off on that. But what's funny is like without being a car junkie, and I almost like there's a part of me it's like thinking like this is just a kid's slang. Like when you hear like, and I'm probably wrong. But I just, in my mind, I always kind of work chrome reverse rims with white wall slicks, and it turns to the quarter mile in 106. I'm not sure what any of that completely means. Quarter mile, 106.
But it sounds cool being sung.
Yeah, really cool. But like you're going a quarter mile, minute 6, people run it quicker than that. What are we talking about here exactly? I know that the car junkies out there know it, but to me, it was just like cool.
Yeah.
Like it is just like somebody knows what they're talking about, and I think it's super cool.
Yeah.
So.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then 409 and Shutdown.
Yeah, 409 I think ends side 1, and so we've talked about that. This is the only tune that Gary Usher gets writing credit on. Why? Because this is from early. This is after Murray has kind of become wary of Gary Usher, and Gary kind of gets pushed out of things, and that's maybe why I know it's a reason why Gary goes and starts working on Beach Boy sound-alike stuff, with Gary was the first producer of the Byrds too, so I mean, people wonder why Gary Usher was out making records with Nick Benet doing Beach Boy knockoff. Well, it's kind of because he'd been pushed out of Beach Boy's world, and Roger Christian had been brought in. Does that make any sense? So I just want to say that about 409, but we've already
talked about it.
Did you have anything to say about 409? I mean,
I love the tune, but this is just a completely me. Like I just like the other stuff on the album better. Maybe because I just have heard 409 so much in my life. Like if I'm going to sit and listen to Little Deuce Coupe, 409 is like I just don't listen to it as much. But it's nothing. I like when we did Wilson Project, I really liked 409. And one of the reasons why is because it fit my vocal range better than a lot of stuff that we did. But I will say, it'd be lower on my list just maybe from the saturation.
If you think one of the things is 409 sounds a little bit out of place on here. Not it's a car song, so it's in place. But you got to remember it was recorded so much earlier than that was the first. So it sounds to me, it's got that primitive sound compared to the rest of the record. And even there's another spot where you can really hear Dennis being out of tune in a couple of spots on 409 on the vocals. And so to me, 409 just compared to the rest of the album has less of a polished feel to it. I guess. So anyway,
maybe a more, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe a little bit more basic. Well, and like you said, primitive, like a more basic feel than some of the others.
Less instruments too, for the most part. Then you got Shutdown to start the next. We've talked about that one, but this is a tune, and we maybe this is one that. The Wilson Project, the band John and I had, we did 4 tunes that we recorded for a demo, and this was one of them. And I remember we forgot we're gonna do some sort of a special video for the Wilson Project, and we'll do that. But we've already said a ton about this. However, it's the earliest time that Roger Christian wrote with Brian.
Yeah, and then I guess anything, John, Shutdown, anything that you, because we already talked about it on the past episode, but
Yeah,
it has the same sort of feel as 409.
I honestly like maybe a little bit more. I like it maybe a little bit more just from the less I hear it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But other than that, it's just a song I enjoy.
Yeah. Well, and it's actually the 409, speaking to what you were saying a moment ago, is that 409 commercial with the spray,
Well, you get that attached to
yeah,
it.
so especially for someone like me, that I probably heard the 409 commercial before I did the actual song.
Same thing in the 70s happened. There, Sun-Kissed, the soda, orange soda.
Yeah,
they used
vibrations.
Good Vibrations, and that was everybody associated Good Vibrations with Sun-Kissed for a long time because of that branding. Thing.
Yeah.
Fun. There's been a couple of things. Just I can understand that completely.
Yeah. So then now we've mentioned a few times Spirit of America.
Yeah, and so this is another Brian Roger Christian tune. The cool thing about it is that it's, talking about the Land Speed records, and that's done not very far from here, out on the Bonneville Salt Flats. Just drove across there with Asleep at the Wheel not too long ago. And specifically, they're talking about a guy named Craig Breedlove who set the record relatively soon, it must have been around that time, which was 407 miles an hour. And so it's kind of it is a car song, but it's interesting how they came up with these ideas for song lyrics and stuff like that.
Really cool how the Beach Boys were able to integrate what's happening at that point of American history into a lot of their albums and a lot of their tracks. Not a lot of groups do it. That's something that is most people don't know, that type of thing happened. And all of a sudden you hear this and you go, a kid listening to that go like, hey, Dad, did this happen? Yeah. This is something that went down at this point in time.
Yeah. This is actually my favorite song on this album.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I really like this one.
There's another, so I talked about it being a doo-wop variant, and even Mike has a doo-wop bass vocal on this.
I was actually wondering who was the bass vocal, because it's deep. It's really deep.
That's Mike.
Yeah. Well, I guess I should rephrase it. This is my favorite of the newer songs, not counting the ones that have been, put on here that we've already heard before. Of the newer songs on this album, this one I liked the best, which was kind of shocking even for me. So then our Car Club, which was
done on the
Surfer Girl
album, and I wanted to say on Spirit of America, another great chord progression, just like Ballad of Ole Betsy, and our Car Club. One of the things I didn't talk about before then, I think I referenced that it's a blues. But it's got this crazy little 1/4 thing going on in it, and this is a Brian and Mike Love tune. This is let's see, and it's that, and then you go to B, the 4 chord, but then it's almost like you're changing keys because he does the same thing over that 4 chord. There's Watermelon Man in there. I think I referenced that on the last one. It's a great little tune with some good music ideas in it. And then this one has Hal Blaine, Steve Douglas. Most of the newer tunes have some of those, a few guys from what would be known as the Wrecking Crew on it. So lots of sax on this record that you, of course, hear that. Well, I guess that was on Surfer Girl, but then Spirit of America, the sax was prominent on that one.
Yeah.
So I guess we can go on to No Go Showboat, which is this is one of my favorites on here, and a funny song, the lyrics about it, being a car that looks good but ain't very good.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking when I was young, I knew that a spot in the hook on this, that it was Al singing. And I thought, I knew that there was something weird about that's Al's voice, white wall strips with racing, there's a a vocal hook in there that Al sings. But I also like Brian's falsetto vocal right out of the gate is just kind of slamming. He's just and it's a great chord progression in the key of D flat. That's another thing. The songs on here: Little Deuce Coupe, A flat; Ballad of Ole Betsy, A flat; Be True to Your School, B flat; Car Crazy Cutie, B; Spirit of America, E. It's a bunch of weird keys for rock and roll songs. It's not your standard guy. It's a guy that's more interested in jazz. Right? Yeah. Those are hard.
What do you think the reason for that was? Do you think that's because Brian wanted to start to show people like, hey, you know, we're going to go branch out?
No, he looked at it very much from the perspective of certain keys made him feel a certain way, and so he'd choose a key specifically for a song. Go, oh, I like the feeling of this. I think it'll fit people's vocal ranges and everything like that. But he had a lot more freedom than other musicians of the day because he was studying more complicated music, so he had those options available to him. You know, which we can go on to maybe the next song, which is "A Young Man Is Gone," which is not original song, and it's not the first time the Beach Boys have done this. This is originally written by a guy that wrote Route 66. We cover that in Sleep at the Wheel, and he's written a lot of other great tunes, but it was known as Their Hearts Were Full of Spring. I don't know, because nobody gets the writer's credit besides Bobby Troop on it. I don't know who came up with the new lyrics for it. I don't know if it was Roger Christian or if it was Mike or whatever like that. But this is probably, I think this Young Man Is Gone version, I've heard many versions of them doing Their Hearts Were Full of Spring live and in demos and stuff like that. I think this is sung so great and so performed really, really well. It's double tracked and it sounds really thick. But they're referencing James Dean had died. Recently.
Okay.
And
I had that question of who
the rebel without a cause.
That's what I was saying. Like you're getting from a lot of Beach Boys tunes like a story of, you know, like now we hear a story about James Dean, we hear a story about the Spirit of America. I love that about the music.
This is so John and I have known this forever. It's a really hard song to sing. The fact that he could teach those parts to his brothers and cousin and friend. I mean, it's
because it's just a cappella, right?
Yeah. But it's very, very, very hard to sing. I mean, it is not just harmony; it's jazz harmony, and sometimes jazz harmony with a lot of hard tricks in it, you know, and those, like I've said before, those guys just didn't know it was hard, you know, they sang what he fed them, you know. I will say on this one, John and I's cousin, Sammy, he passed away, when he was 43 years old, and he was our manager of the Wilson Project. And I did this song at his funeral that John spoke at. And I did want to acknowledge, Sammy was a big part of me and John's early Beach Boy history and was a big supporter. And John was especially real close to him at the end of his life. And so I wanted to put that shout out to Sammy there at this point.
Yeah. That I don't even remember you playing it at the funeral. I'm sure you did. It was just a tough day.
Would you just like on the violin or?
No, I played the guitar and sang it.
You sang it too?
Yeah, and a couple, the two other guys from the Wilson Project, Bud and Lewis, came and we did a couple other songs too, but not Beach Boy tunes. We did Can't Do I'm All Right and something else I can't. I'm like John, that was that day was, I can barely remember it, but I did, as I was doing the notes, I was thinking a lot about Sammy on this, and for some reason that came up, but it was a tough day for our family.
Yeah.
You know, going back to just briefly the No-Go Showboat, it's funny, and it correlates with what I said earlier today. For years and years, I don't even think I knew what the song meant, that it was a car that looked good but wasn't fast. It was just, I just liked the song. Like, hey, this is a cool song.
Yeah.
Like, as you're talking, like I'm listening to this song since I was 3, 4, 5 years old. So all of a sudden you're 6 years old and you know lyrics to every song on this album, but not necessarily what the lyrics mean or what it's really about. So that's like, and I'll bet you I never knew, you know, like, and then all of a sudden you get back into the Beach Boys and you're sitting there going like, oh, here's what that was, you know, like, and there's a lot of meaning to a lot of stuff. I'm not saying particular on all the little Deuce Coupe songs because it's more just about a car, but you get, especially as he starts to move forward with his writing, there is a lot of meaning in a lot of the stuff that he does. So.
And that brings us to Custom Machine, the last one, which I've got chords, exclamation point, punk, exclamation point. This is the gem of the album. This is Brian and Mike, but I mean, this thing, check my custom machine. Well, she's never flake. I mean, and that's just a sampling of it. I mean, the thing is just punk rock before punk rock, and then the harmonies are incredible on it. I truly think this is one of the fast Beach Boys songs that is a real gem that a lot of people don't know about. I've met other people that have said the same thing and said that's a red hot original. I mean, from a music standpoint, from the way they deliver it, it's really tough to check my custom machine, you know. Yeah,
in my notes I'm like, whoo. That's like literally what I wrote down. Whoo. It's just like that's the feel when you listen to it.
You like Custom Machine?
When I step on the gas, she goes.
Yeah. And that's the whole that whole when I step, and then wow, the vocals being a car engine.
Yeah, it's just a cool song, every way, shape, and form. Like it's one of those songs that it never got the credit it probably deserved, and I'm sure everybody who loves every group out there is like, oh, there's so many tracks on this album that are great. But I mean, that's just where I'm at with certain Beach Boys songs. Like this just never got the traction. Like that song should have got all sorts of credit.
The Ripcords, the same Bruce and Terry, who were the Ripcords who did Hey Little Cobra. And they did a good version.
Good cover of it?
Yeah, there's a few bands that covered Custom Machine in
the
60s.
There's like punk bands that'll cover Beach Boys songs like all the way into today, and I every once in a while I'll come across one that I'll just be like, oh, that's but that'd be a cool one if a punk band just did decide like, hey, we're gonna cover that Custom Machine.
Yeah.
Well, I know. Hey, man. I think we've probably extinguished our Little Deuce Coupe time. I mean, I wanted to thank John for coming on here.
Yeah,
it's been something we've talked about for a long time, getting him on here, and it's been a lot of fun.
So next episode, we have Shutdown Volume 2.
Yes.
That'll be the next analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, John, for coming. Thank you, listeners, as always, for listening and subscribing and doing all that stuff that helps the podcast grow. We appreciate it, and then we'll just see you in the next episode. We'll go over, we'll do a nice little analysis of Shutdown Volume 2. Sound good? All right, we'll see you next time.
Tack it up, buddy, gonna shut you down. It happened on the street where the road is wide. Two cool short minutes side by side. Yeah, I'm feeling Dick and Stingray and a 413. We're revving up our engines and it sounds really good. Tack it up, buddy, gonna shut you down. Declining numbers at an even rate. At the count of one, we both accelerate. Nothing red light, the slicks are starting to spin. 413's really digging in. Now, gotta be cool now. Power shift, here we go. The super stock Dodge is running out in low, but my fuel injector Stingray's really starting to go. To get the traction, I'm riding the clutch. My pressure plate's burning, that machine's too much. Pedals to the floor, here's the quad kick, and now the 413's lead is starting to shake. He's off with ram induction, but it's understood. I got a fuel injected engine sitting under my hood. Shut it off, buddy, now I shut you down. shut it off, buddy, now I shut you down. Shut it off, buddy.